Hey, it's Scott here. Happy to be with you again here at Marketing with Story to talk about story transitions and how they can make you more sales. So just to recap, we're here talking about that part of your sales story where you transition between your story and your pitch. Uh, if you're using stories in your sales message, basically there's three parts to it. The first part is the story that you tell to want to transport your readers into this world. And the second is the segue or the transition. And the third part is the pitch or the offer that you're making. Those three parts. And as I've discussed before, you can think of those operating synergistically together like an electrical circuit with an electric motor, where you've got your power source, like your battery, which is your story, which supplies that emotion and motivation. And you've got your motor, which is your sales. It's the engine of your business. And you want to connect the power of the story to that pitch or that sale, and you do that with a good story transition. It's like the switch that you want that switch to be on or closed, so you can get the electricity, the energy, the motivation to your sales process. All right, and when you get good at this, then you're not feeling so awkward about that, and it helps make that flow better. So as you probably know, my name is Scott McKinstry, and I am a copywriter and also look at how you can use storytelling mechanics to make a better sales message. I wrote a blog on Copy Chief for several years, where a lot of you probably know me from, where I did just that, broke down stories and show how you can mine some persuasive message powers from stories and put them in your sales messages. And that's what we're doing today, where we focus on that transition point where you turn between your story and the sale. So I wanted to address kind of some of the questions that I've been getting. One of the top one can be basically boiled down to, how do you make your story plausible and connect it seamlessly to the sale, so that it doesn't feel awkward? And the best way to do that is by really focusing on the point, the lesson that you want to draw out. In the last video, I talked about the 5 P's of storytelling, how you focus on a person, at a place, in a period of time, with a problem, and then a plot, what kind of happens once they have that problem. And you take those 5 P's, you tell that story, and then you point. Right? You talk to the hand and then you point. And the point is the lesson that you want to draw out from the story. So if you are focused on the message of your story from the get-go, you are going to be in a better position to make that flow, that seamless flow. So one way to think about this, and I'll talk about this more later, is think about that you're telling a parable. As you may know, a parable is a short story intended to impart some lesson. You see it in religion, you see it in ancient history, like Aesop's fables of the tortoise and the hare, and parents talking to their kids might use it, or coaches talking to their players. A little parable to make a point. So when you have that from the get-go, you're going to be able to then make a transition a little bit better. So let's talk about how mastering this transition between the story and the sale will help you make better sales. The first of all is you're going to be able to use stories more often. So one thing that can hold us back from using stories is if we feel like it's just going to be awkward, it's not going to connect, and it's going to look too manipulative or salesy, so you just don't use it to begin with. Right? If you don't know how to use a tool, you probably won't use that tool. And storytelling is a powerful tool in advertising and marketing. It's not the only tool, and it's not always appropriate, but it can increase persuasion in the right setting by doing what's called narrative transportation. This is that experience that happens when you're caught up in a story, watching a movie, or just listening to a friend, and you start to imagine yourself in that scenario. Those imaginary parts of your imagination parts of your brain light up, and you start to feel yourself immersed in it. Studies show that when that happens, you are less judgmental, less kind of analytical, finding objections, and so that is a good frame of mind to deliver information and persuade as well. That's why you see, big advertising campaigns from Nike to Budweiser to Apple use storytelling in their commercials, their messaging. That's why you see direct response sales letters use stories, whether it's the origin story of the product owner. This is how I developed my product. I was having this problem. I couldn't lose the weight. I wasn't getting any sales. This is the pain I went through. This is how I developed it. That's a story, right? Those are powerful because they help transport us. Or it might be if you're sending out emails, things that happen in your life, just a way to gauge into so you're not just talking at people. Telling that story helps. But if you are uncomfortable making that transition to whatever you're pitching, whatever the lesson you're teaching, you're not going to use the story. So just getting better at this transition means that you will be able to pick up and use the tool of storytelling. And the link between your story and your product matters. The other day I came across a scientific study in the Journal of Advertising. There were a pair of scholars in Vienna who looked at whether the link between your story and your product mattered. Their study was called "Don't Lose Your Product in Story Translation: How Product Story Link in Narrative Advertisements Increases Persuasion." And basically what they did is they had experimental subjects watch story ads in commercials. And those participants, and then they measured basically how persuaded they were. And the experimenters also looked at how strong the link was between the story and the product. The gist of what they found is when the product and story were linked strongest, the people who watched it were most persuaded. So you had the better opportunity for making more sales because they were more persuaded. Here's what they said. Here's a quote from the study. Quote, "The strength of the link between story and product," oh, sorry, I went ahead of myself. They said, quote, "A truly weak link between product and story constitutes an issue for the effectiveness of story ads, lowering engagement with the ad and its persuasive impact." End quote. So they went on to say, why is this case? Why does it matter what the link is? And they said, quote, "The strength of the link between story and product affects comprehension of meaning, which influences narrative transportation, which in turn impacts persuasion. Therefore, narrative advertisements that insufficiently establish the link between story and product are less persuasive." End quote. So what that means basically is you have to be able to understand the story and the link between it and the product to be transported into the world of the story. And you need to be transported to be more persuaded. So that's why that link matters, so that the people are not going, huh? Why? What does this story matter? In the context of an ad. And they conclude by saying, quote, "Finally, an immersing story is the basis for a good narrative ad. But to unfold its full persuasive potential, the product story link needs to be strong." End quote. So that's what we're doing. When we make that link between our story and our pitch stronger, and we get better at making that link in words, whatever sentences we use to do it, and the concepts behind those words, we are increasing the persuasiveness of our ads. Another benefit for it is that if you start with this end in mind, making a point to your story, that can help you generate stories. Now, you might generate stories by just kind of talking out loud or writing stream of consciousness, like in Morning Pages, Julia Cameron style, or maybe you like to use a ChatGPT or another AI prompt to get the juices flowing, or just a conversation maybe with yourself or with a friend, or maybe you get analytical and use that 5P talk to the hand framework, and then you start writing down ideas and get more analytical. However you do it, when you're trying to come up with ideas, having some kind of constraint around the generation process can help. You maybe have experienced this when you've done any kind of art, whether that's poetry or painting. A painter uses a canvas to frame it. If you're telling a poem like a haiku that's 17 syllables usually, and 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, usually concentrated. The poem is concentrated on a single image or emotion, and that gives you a focus to be able to better make it. And the same thing is true for if you're having trouble coming up with stories. When you're focused on the point, that you're going to make that can help you generate more ideas. And then on the offer side, mastering this transition can help you pitch better too, and here's how. If you feel awkward about pitching, you don't want to come across as salesy, it's just not part of your natural DNA like for me, getting used to making that point is a natural springboard to pitching because, remember our one sentence, why am I telling you this story? What's the point of this story? You make the point, and that naturally transitions into the offer. Because it's like this thing in my offer, and I've got something to help you with that, right? I mean, it's that simple. Here's a story. This is why I'm telling you. This is the point. It's like this thing that it's important in your life, and I got something to help you with that, right? As you begin to think in those terms, then you can make that pitch and do it in an authentic way because it connects with this deeper, important benefit point that you want to make. And the more you do it, the better practice you'll get, the more likely you're going to be able to use this tool. So I hope we can begin to see why this simple little thing, it could just be a single sentence or a couple of sentences, excuse me here, sorry about that. It can be a couple of simple sentences, but why it can be still very important for the power of your story sales message. Here's one way to think about it. Imagine yourself in this scenario. You're sitting down to write an email to your list. Let's suppose you are an insurance broker. You're a third-party insurance broker. You sell insurance as an independent agent, life insurance, let's say. And you have an offer for a free consultation, let's say a 1-hour consultation, where you kind of show what people's options are in the life insurance world. And you know that they are, people can be resistant to wanting to sit down to a consultation. Okay, they're going to pitch me, they're going to try to sell me, I'm going to feel uncomfortable, I don't want to be in that situation. But you're doing a consultative, based selling process where you really want to help them. You want to give this information, and even if they just walk away with that, that puts a smile on your face. And you also know that the more people that you teach and help, the more sales in your pipeline. But you first still need to get their attention and get them to sign up for that free consultation. So you decide to use the tool of storytelling. You don't have a story, let's say, but you sit down, you're writing this email, and you think, okay, what's the transition going to be? What's the point of this story? Why am I telling them this story? Well, I know that the benefit I'm giving them is clarity. And clarity is really important when you're facing a difficult choice that can be confusing, a choice that has lasting impact on your life, like what life insurance to choose. So I want to tell a story that illustrates that point. Great. You're a lot of the way there. Now, you could reach into your past for a story where you helped another client who is facing confusion and you help them choose a life insurance policy that worked for them, or maybe for yourself or a family member. That could work. But let's say you don't want to encourage too much resistance to your sale, like, oh, okay, they just want to pitch me their sales insurance. So you want to tell a story about another time where you faced that kind of uncertainty. So maybe back in your college days or career choosing days, you didn't know what to do. There were all these bewildering choices. Let's say you were choosing majors. You could go into medicine or law or accounting. And you were agonizing over it, and you went to one of the guidance counselors at the school, and they said, look, why don't you do this? Spend a month at a law office, at a hospital, and an accounting office. As an intern, I can help set that up for you. And just be around it so you can see what those worlds are like. And that will help you a lot more than just spinning your wheels and worrying about it. So you had that plan in mind, you did it, and you found that you liked accounting the best, and that's the path that you went to. So you would kind of talk about, you might go to those 5 Ps, you at that place, like in the guidance counselor's office, the time period back in college, your problem, you didn't know what to do, and then the plot, kind of what happened. And talk about your feelings, the discomfort, and then the result of that, assuming that it's true, of course. or somebody you know who went through this story. That's just one idea. You could take something from fiction. If you've got a rapport with your list where you are telling stories from fiction, like I do, you might reach for, like, one of my favorites that I mentioned recently is The Lord of the Rings. And so I might tell the story about the Council of Elrond. For those of you Lord of the Rings fan, you know that early on in the saga, Frodo has taken the ring from the Shire. He's been stabbed by the ring race. They barely make it to Rivendell, a little safe haven, and the last homely house of the West. And he's recovering, and the question is what to do next. Does he just get to go home to the Shire? There's a lot of doubts in the air, and so they have a council, the Council of Elrond, where people from all over Middle-earth, elves, dwarves, humans, get together and they share their story of what's going, their clash with the threats from Sauron, the big enemy who wants to get that ring back. Frodo listens to each story in turn. He sees what the stakes are, and it clarifies for him what the ring means and what needs to happen. The only way to safeguard peace and prevent darkness from spreading over the land is to destroy that ring, bring it to the cracks of Mount Doom. With that clarity in mind, Frodo stands up and says, "I will take the ring, though I do not know the way." He made a difficult choice because he had clarity in the moment. Why am I telling you this story? Because when we face a difficult choice, it helps to have some clarity. That's what I love to do when I teach people about the world of life insurance. It can be confusing. There's this term, this comprehensive. There's these companies. It can be this, and not all of them are appropriate for you. But unless you know what your options are, you can kind of spin your wheels endlessly. So I put together a program where I give you a little checkup, and at the end of it, you'll kind of know what your options are and what you need to do to figure out more. There's no obligation to do anything else. It's just my way of help teaching about this kind of cool tool that I've discovered, with life insurance. And then that's it. So whatever the story that you choose, you are in a better position now because you started with that end in mind, with what that point is. So I hope you can begin to see how having the skill of making the story transition will help you to start using stories in your sales messages. So I want to let you know that in the next video, I'm going to give you my own offer, which is for a live training on how to get better at this skill. We'll talk through some examples, and we'll go through kind of the frameworks to use, kind of touch back on those 5 Ps. We'll talk about the power of the parable, thinking of your stories like a parable, and how you can use that to make a point. And I'll field some live questions too, if there are those of you who want to share, and we can kind of go through in real time story transitions. Should have time for at least a couple of those. It's going to be about an hour, and it's going to take place early next week. So I'll be sending you an email and a video later this week to give you the details. So do keep a lookout for that, because it's going to be a limited time offer. You're going to have a couple of days to decide whether you want to sign up for it. And I'll have some kind of fast acting bonuses for the people who sign up first. Some consultation, some free consultations I'll be giving away, and also a guide for storytelling. So keep an eye out for that email. Thank you so much for your time and attention. If you've got questions that I haven't answered, please give me an email at scott@marketingwithstory.com, or reply to any of the emails I've sent, or just leave a comment below in this video. So thanks again, and stay storied.